So victory.
The European Union agreed to all of Trump's conditions.
The United States will continue to protect Europe from Russia and China, and Europe will build up its own military strength. While under our umbrella, Europe is fully opening its markets to the United States. That means now 450 million people on the continent will be able to buy excellent, inexpensive American goods duty-free, which they couldn't do before. Europe is investing in American technologies, buying American energy resources, paying 15% to import its own goods, and purchasing military equipment for itself and Ukraine. This is a huge victory for Trump, not a victory over Europe, but a victory because this is the path he outlined for our country. It's not that something bad will happen to Europe now. Europe will just start living within its means. That's the only thing that will happen. Plus, we demanded that our partners and allies deal with Islamic immigration. But we'll start with something else, with our internal affairs, with the cleansing that began the renewal of America, the restoration of America. The CIA has materials showing that in 2016, Putin didn't actually want Trump at all. Putin wanted, although he told someone, yeah, I don't care. But in reality, judging by all the documents, he wanted Hillary. Why? Did the Kremlin have compromising materials on her? They had in their hands a medical report and correspondence with doctors showing that she was seriously mentally ill and that she was taking drugs. Well, it said strong tranquilizers. That means she can't be president or even a chairperson. A sewing and tailoring club at a very average school in a rather rundown neighborhood. But we already started talking about that in the previous video. Yes, I want to remind you that I'm leaving today for 10 days, so the shows will be less frequent. There will be shows, I promise, but definitely not every day. In the meantime, you can download my book, Capitalism 101, for free. There will be a link in the description. And you can also receive it daily after that, also for free, and it's all thanks to nonprofit. That is, you can receive these 10-minute videos daily with historical anecdotes, stories, and just entertaining philosophy. Well, and now, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino wrote the strangest tweet yesterday. I'm shaking from what I found out, he wrote. I'll never be able to erase this from my memory. What did he find out? What is it that he won't be able to erase from Epstein's memory? Maybe something else. Maybe Obama with his betrayal at the very least of the principles of our republic. Dan continued.
Yesterday we talked with you about this mysterious tweet that went viral from Dan Bongino. He said he would never be the same after discovering something very dark and sinister, corruption inside the FBI. Here's the post. You can see that it really went viral with 20 million views, 43,000 reposts, and 210,000 likes. During my time here as Deputy Director of the FBI, I repeatedly reported that things were happening that you might not be able to see, but they were happening. The Director and I are committed to rooting out corruption in government agencies and the political use of law enforcement and intelligence operations. Pay attention to this last part. It will come in handy. This is our priority. But what I learned during our justified and necessary investigations into the aforementioned issues, namely intelligence operations and the use of federal law enforcement against political opponents, shook me to my core. We cannot run a republic this way. I will never be the same after what I have learned. We will conduct these righteous investigations lawfully and by the rules. We will get the answers we all deserve. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will lead, but I can promise you that it will be a worthy pursuit of the truth. Not my truth, not your truth, but the truth. God bless America and those who defend her. Sincerely, Dan Bongino.
What can be understood from this? What was it
Something related.
With intelligence, with corruption at the top of the power structures? In what sense, we can only guess. And my guess is that our intelligence agencies tried to physically eliminate the political opponents of Obama, Hillary, Biden, Kamala, and all the other proteges of that very fascist regime they were building in the United States of America. For some reason, I think the Epstein case is somehow connected to all of this. I don't know how, but I don't know. Of course, these are just facts, but I have a feeling that there is some kind of connection, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. I want to remind you that the current director of the FBI, Kash Patel, while working in Congress on Devin Nunes's committee, was the person who uncovered the background of the Democrats' deception of the country. He found that the Russian connection was with Hillary, not Trump. He found out who she and the Democratic National Committee paid for dirt on Trump, not to discover dirt, but to invent it. Those are different functions, and now he is the one leading the investigation at the FBI. Remember, there was an outcry all over the country. Putin is helping Trump. It turned out that it was the opposite. Russia actually preferred Hillary. That article links out
here. This article refers to a source about how the intelligence community's assessment was false, how everything was the opposite. For example, here in this very long and very detailed article, they explain in detail how this intelligence community assessment was made. They tried to portray the Republicans as the party supported by the Kremlin, when in fact it's the opposite, right? And they did. It's a long and fascinating article. I recommend you read it. The link is right there. There's a fantastic edition on your screen. They dive deep into the sources here with the assessment of the intelligence community. And how did John Brennan, Comey, and Barack Obama, together with Hillary Clinton, accuse President Trump when in fact it was the other way around? What they did was use Russian spies.
Today there is confirmation and documents that the Democrats used the Federal Security Service. I'm referring to the correct 3 Russian letters, not American ones. That the Democrats entered into a criminal conspiracy with them. Like Teddy, the surviving Kennedy brother once did. The senator sent his friend, Senator Tommy, to Moscow with a proposal for the KGB of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and the Democratic Party of the United States of America to work together against Ronald Reagan. He suggested convincing Americans that the KGB wasn't the enemy, but rather the Republicans were the true enemies of America. History is a wonderful, wonderful thing, right? Yes, I mean real history, not the kind that gets rewritten by the victors later.
You see, this shows that it was actually Hillary who used the Russians. The Russians preferred Hillary, the Russians wanted Hillary, and she knows it. She pays Russian spies to write a dossier on Donald Trump. That's what Dan Bongino is talking about. Now we don't have any information because Dan Bongino is working outside the secure facility, working inside the secure facility, obviously reviewing these documents and the documents on Russiagate. But Dan Bongino is a digger in this task force, and that's the point. Dan Bongino confirmed it. This fragment concerns Hillary Clinton. Now, who is giving Dan Bongino the documents? Dan Radcliffe, CIA director. Dan, not correction, Dan Radcliffe, John Radcliffe, Dan Bongino. John Radcliffe, CIA director, is handing these documents to Dan Bongino. And now Radcliffe says this morning that it's quite possible Hillary Clinton will end up in jail for this. An incredible clip.
Radcliffe, the CIA director, says there are such Augean stables there that documents are being taken from the CIA and handed over to a special team led by Banjin. This is an absolutely unprecedented cooperation between agencies where instead of doing their own analysis, they send it to a neighboring agency for analysis. I don't think anything like this has ever happened before. So once again, Maria, so Bartholomew and John Radcliffe are discussing Banjin's shock.
There is still an opportunity for indictments. There is still an opportunity for indictments, potential prosecutions, and holding accountable those who may have lied under oath. People like John Brennan, James Comey, and possibly Hillary Clinton.
Well, that's why I made the recommendations I did. The Director of National Intelligence made recommendations, and Gabbard made recommendations. And why? We will continue to share intelligence that will support our Department of Justice's ability to bring fair and well-founded charges against those who committed this deception against the American people. And this is a stain on our country.
And here's another discussion. Manjin's tweet, Trump, Russia, the raid at Mar-a-Lago. Why, for what reason, and who?
I believe one of the things they had there was... I really think that one of the things they had down there were documents about the Russian hoax from the CIA, showing the guilt of the CIA and the FBI. There were numerous investigations. Director Redcliffe, former Director of National Intelligence Redcliffe, talked about this. I think it's probably one of those things they might have had there because he ordered them to be declassified. The fact that the Department of Justice hasn't completed the process for further dissemination of these documents as declassified doesn't make these documents any less.
So you're talking about the original Spygate documents, the original documents that started the whole operation, which became Russiagate, which became the Dossier, and everything else. We're talking about the original electronic communications and everything else that was obtained at the time. And this, when you were working with the divisions, you worked with Kash Patel and many others, and by the way, I think the late, great Rich Higgins.
For example, the investigation into what the CIA was actually doing and the evidence they examined to conclude that Russia wanted Trump to win the election, the year 2016. There is a huge amount of documentation showing abuse and guilt. They cherry-picked information to reach a conclusion, while the overwhelming amount of evidence pointing in the other direction was left out. That was the situation for Director Redcliffe. This accuses the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI.
That is, there's an avalanche of documents coming in, shattering all the arguments of the Democratic Party of the United States. So basically, that's how it all started, says Kash Patel.
And all these things somehow started coming together in a very unusual way. I informed Datavan that we're tracking the money, and I'm stating now that the Democratic National Committee and Hillary funded this. At 9 ante Meridium on a weekday, he looked at me and said, "Cash, if you're going to start drinking this morning, get out of my office." It always comes down to money, and that's the easiest thing to track because it has to be documented or moved somehow. We were able, in accordance with the judge's authority, to allow ourselves and another colleague to visit the lawyers' banks and review the records in a closed session. And we were not allowed to disclose to anyone what we had reviewed. Then, finally, on the eve of the court's decisions, Fusion revealed that Christopher Steele had been paid by the Democratic National Committee itself. There were names that would eventually become known, who were receiving money from Fusion, names that are known now but at that time were not. Nellie Orr, the wife of Breas Orr, was receiving money from Fusion, as we learned, to gather intelligence about Russia and then pass it on to the FBI. We were able to find out that the lawyers from Perkins-Coie were the attorneys for the Democratic National Committee. Nellie, the wife of Breas Orr, worked for a company that Perkins-Coie represented. They paid $10 million, and then they took that $10 million and paid it out. They paid Christopher Steele $168,000 to dig up compromising material. They paid Nellie Orr, I think, $50,000 for her research against the president and his daughter. And they handed all of this directly to the Bureau, which then used it in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and in the investigation against the president. So now you've connected the money and the people and put a political party right at the center of your opponent. It's outrageous.
Let's look at this saga through the lens of a lawyer who worked with Epstein, with Trump, with Congress, with the Supreme Court, one of the most famous legal scholars in the country, Alan Bershkovich.
You represented Jeffrey Epstein?
You represented Jeffrey Epstein as a lawyer in the past. You represented Donald Trump as a lawyer in the past. Which of these names cost you more friends? That's a tough question. I believe Trump. I definitely lost more friends on Martha's Vineyard because of Trump. As soon as I started impersonating Trump, I got banned. My books weren't sold at the book fair. I couldn't speak at the local Reform synagogue. I wasn't invited to the community center. The library banned me. I was treated the same way Joseph McCarthy treated communists, only worse, because McCarthyism didn't go after children. They went after my children and grandchildren. My wife became a victim, my granddaughter became a victim, my daughter became a victim. People say, oh, you're related to Alan Dershowitz. He defended Trump. We don't want to have anything to do with you. I have grandchildren and children who are professionals, and it affected their careers, just like it affected my life. One day my wife went to the gym, and one of the women who was in the gym walked out and said, I can't be in the same gym as your wife, Alan Dershowitz.
And he was a Democrat all his life. He defended murderers, embezzlers, political scandals, financial fraud. He was a media darling, invited to high society parties, meetings with presidents, gave speeches at universities. Everything changed the day he agreed, accepted Trump's offer to be his lawyer, to be, well, not exactly his lawyer, but to be part of his legal team. Alan said once I heard him in an interview how his longtime friends would hang up the phone when he called. That was after he said he would help Trump during the impeachment. How he was notified about the cancellation of the classes he taught, the lectures, and how clients started leaving him. And he said that he couldn't even imagine that in kind, sweet, compassionate liberals, there could be so much venom and hatred. I don't know if Dashkovich switched to the Republicans. I don't think so, but he definitely left the Democratic Party.
You know, I've represented O.J. Simpson. I've represented Klaus von Bülow. I've represented, so to speak, Bill Clinton. I've represented Bill Clinton. I've represented Ted Kennedy on a murder charge, and there was never any problem with that. But Donald Trump, that was the end of the world. It was as if I not only represented Adolf Hitler, but actually supported his policies.
His wife, children, and grandchildren stopped being invited to weddings and birthdays. By the way, have you noticed that Russian-speaking supporters of the Democratic Party have the same unrelenting hatred and desire to hurt those they disagree with on economic or political issues?
Help me clarify something. You mentioned on Sean Spicer's show that there is an Epstein list. On Chris Cuomo's show, you said there is no list that Trump or Bondi could get, even if they wanted to. But there is a list of victims, accusers, and defendants in the Southern District of New York. Help me clarify this and why Pam Bondi can't easily access them. Well, the judge sealed them, and the judge sealed a lot of materials, claiming that they want to protect the victims. But let me tell you two stories. One of them is about a woman named Sarah Ransom. She claims to be a victim. She wrote 50 letters to Maureen Callahan, a journalist from the New York Post, saying that she has videos with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. This was on the eve of the 2016 election with Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, and others like Richard Branson. Everyone is having sex with children. She says she has videos and she sent a copy to Russia for protection. An investigation revealed that she fabricated the entire story. In the end, she confessed. So if you only publish the accusations, you'll get accusations, but not the full answer. The same goes for the woman named Maria Farmer, who was shown in, quoted in. This is a woman who made up stories about things she couldn't have seen because they happened years later after she left the situation with Epstein. And this woman who denied the Holocaust said that Jews killed Germans and Germans did not kill Jews. She is a supporter of the protocols of the Elders of Zion. She hates everyone who is Jewish, and yet her name, she accused people. And that's why you can't just have a list of the accused without a list of the accusers and the reasons why they shouldn't be believed. There is a list that includes Shimon Peres, the former Prime Minister of Israel, another former Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, and well-known Jewish philanthropists. You know, anti-Semitic lists have been proposed. It's easy to leave the list. There is no Jeffrey Epstein list. There are only interviews conducted by the FBI, which they didn't believe. The FBI didn't attach any importance to these interviews, but they have them. Lists of names, and the names were redacted, but I know who they are because I conducted my own investigation.
And, for example, in one of the lists, there's the name George Mitchell, the former Senate Majority Leader, and Bill Richardson, the former United Nations Ambassador.
These names are on the list. But are the accusations credible? Well, we don't know. And that's why we shouldn't just protect the alleged victims, because some of these victims are criminals. For example, Sarah Ransom and Maria Farmer are criminals. They are false witnesses. They should be in prison.
And a few FBI employees also say that the Democrats worked on the list to add whoever they wanted and remove whoever they didn't want. Here's how to figure this out.
You
Said that you didn't see anything connecting Donald Trump to Epstein's crimes or fetishes. Attorney David Schoen said he didn't see anything connecting Trump to Epstein's crimes. The attorney who represented 20 of Epstein's victims spoke out and said that he personally didn't see anything that would connect Trump to Epstein's crimes.
We know that they moved in similar circles. But does it seem that the mainstream media and maybe the Democrats, not all Democrats, are using
this as a weapon against Donald Trump since he is in the Oval Office? There's no doubt about it. It's international. I was on a show in India and they tried to lie about Donald Trump. I stopped them. I was on a show in Russia and they tried to lie about Donald Trump. It's become a worldwide attempt to get Trump. You know, I wrote a book a few years ago called Get Trump, and it's about attempts to use the legal system for political purposes.
Could it be that everything is not at all the way they're telling us, but actually quite simple? So no conclusions for now, not until everything is laid out on the table and confirmed. Otherwise, I'll be like those who believe that Jews slaughter peasant children to mix their blood into matzah. I think they're lying about Trump. Well, almost as much as in vitro fertilization. And most importantly, it's about the same, with the only difference being the matzah with the blood of Christian children. He doesn't eat. And by the way, at that time, he's busy remaking the world.
We managed to make a deal that satisfies both sides very much. So it's a very powerful deal.
Within the framework of this preliminary agreement, a 15% general tariff on most goods from the European Union entering the United States is included, and the 50% tariff on steel and aluminum will remain in effect. In addition, Mr. Trump said that the European Union agreed to buy about $750 billion worth of American energy and to invest hundreds of billions more. A much higher general tariff of 30% was supposed to take effect later this week.
The European Union is about to agree to purchase $750 billion worth of energy from the United States. $750 billion worth of energy.
This is a blow to Russia, as you understand.
They are going to agree to invest $600 billion more in the United States than they already do. So they are investing a large amount of money. This amount, it's very significant, but
they are going to invest an additional $600 billion.
I would even suggest that Europe wants to have rights to artificial intelligence, with our Pennsylvania becoming its center.
They're agreeing to open up. They're agreeing to open their countries to
trade with zero tariffs, so that's a very important factor. The opening of their countries. All countries will be open to trade with the United States with zero tariffs.
We will be able to import goods into Europe without customs duties. This is a huge help and support for American manufacturers. I suspect that this is payment for, as I said at the very beginning, for the fact that we protect them. I haven't quite figured out the cars yet. It's possible that we both have a 15% tariff on each other while the rest of the goods have no tariffs. But I could be wrong in this regard. We
have a deal. We have an agreement. We have a trade agreement between the two largest economies in the world. And that's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. This is very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. That's 15% tariffs across the board, all inclusive. The investments that Mr. President just described, they will go to the United States and to buyers there.
Indeed, according to the European market, with 450 million people, is essentially open. So it's a good deal. It's a huge deal.
Yes, there were tough negotiations. I knew that from the very beginning, and it really was very difficult. But we came to good conclusions on your side.
So congratulations again, and thank you very much.
And what's happening within the Democratic Party itself? What are they saying themselves? Do they think everything is just fine? Or is it more like, as they say, panic, run, wrap yourself in a white sheet, and crawl to the cemetery?
A new survey shows that Democrats have the lowest approval rating among voters in 35 years, while Republicans are ahead of them by almost 20 points. How much of a warning sign should this be for Democrats a year before the midterm elections, and what can they do to improve their image among voters?
This is a red alert everywhere, and it's not just a red flag, it's a loud red warning that Democrats shouldn't ignore. I'm saying this thinking about how angry people are because Democrats specifically went into the 2024 election with a platform about how dangerous Donald Trump is. Democrats should heed this message and reevaluate their course of action. This includes their treatment of candidates who genuinely spark voter interest and significantly boost election participation. I'm referring to the Democratic Party candidate for New York City Mayor, Zahran Mamdan. The fact that the Democrats did not give his campaign overwhelming support and then saw polls that let them down means they need to reset. Not only in responding to Donald Trump, but also in attracting young candidates who broaden the base and excite the public. Because that's what they will critically need in 2026.
Now, maybe I'm a fool here because I don't see any numbers that would tell me it's in the Democrats' interest to support and sponsor a candidate like Mr. Mamdani, who is clearly a communist, a socialist. Call him whatever you want. He is a prime example of policies and measures that do not support or promote the well-being of people in our country. And all of history has shown that communist and socialist countries are not the most successful form of government. It doesn't make people prosperous. In fact, it turns people into slaves for the government. And I think that's the last thing Americans need right now.
That's an interesting position on the Democrats. Our actions have led us to a terrible situation, so let's keep doing the same things to fix this catastrophic situation. Well, there is some sense in what they're
saying. Your party, the Democratic Party, posted a chart on Twitter or X in the last few days that showed a sharp rise in food prices. The White House took that Democratic chart and reposted it exactly to show that most of the price spikes on that chart happened during the Biden administration. Then the Democrats deleted the post. So I'm curious, do you think the Democrats have realized their problems, both in terms of communication and in acknowledging that inflation during the Biden era, for example, is one of the reasons why your party is not in power? Yes, I think that's fair. There was inflation during the Biden administration. I was following it quite closely. You know, I know how much beef, eggs, and milk cost where Gabby and I shop in Tucson, Arizona. Gas prices increased during Biden's presidency, rising even higher. You know, prices will go up and down, but I think it's important for Americans to know that Donald Trump's tariff policy will very likely increase costs. It will take some time because of the supply chains. Things coming in, in some cases from all over the world.
Democrats are always scaring people about what will happen in the future because of Trump. And then when that doesn't happen, they come up with something new.
And his trade
policy. His trade policy for my constituents. In Arizona, there are many goods that cross the southern border, agricultural products that create thousands and thousands of jobs, not only in Arizona, but also in the state of Texas. And now we are facing a significant loss of jobs. So when you think that inflation is a problem for families, job losses are an even bigger problem. And we are trying to figure out how to deal with this administration. I spoke with the Minister of Commerce about some of these tariffs, and we haven't gotten the answer we need.
Again, you'll see what happens. You think it was bad under Biden, wait and see how bad it's going to get. Very soon, it's going to get even worse. It's like, let me protect you from that thug because he's even worse than I am. By the way, have you noticed that Russian and Ukrainian speakers, I don't want to say heads, haters of our country say the same thing. It will get even worse. Even worse. It feels like every few weeks a new poll comes out.
It appears that every few weeks a new poll is published stating that the Democrats have reached their lowest point ever, with the latest one being from the Democrats' approval rating hit a new low, with 63% of voters viewing the party unfavorably. What does your party need to do to get out of this?
What do I think about this Democratic poll? Yes, we are out of favor again. What I see and hear from my constituents, whether it's when I answer the phone in my office or when I'm at the supermarket, everyone is concerned, upset, anxious. They're worried about gas. They're worried about war crimes in Ukraine.
I mean, this woman here, she claims that an American electrician, a physical therapist, a store clerk, a school bus driver, they're worried about war crimes in Ukraine, not about their own family's business. And that's why the Democratic Party's approval rating is so low. And you were asked, why is the Democratic Party's approval rating so low? She told us that people are nervous because of the crimes in Ukraine. Truly, the Democrats are idiots. Or maybe they're just liars?
They're also now worried about things they didn't used to care about before. Medicaid. Tens of thousands of my constituents are at risk of losing Medicaid support, whether it's because of substance abuse or for their disabled child. So they're worried about things they didn't have to worry about before, and they see a president who isn't solving big problems, some of which are very much man-made.
So United States citizens don't trust the Democrats because the Republicans make them nervous. Do you understand anything? So the damn journalists just sit there like empty dummies, like banana peels or whatever you call it, just the skin, and stay silent. Let's listen to Deborah Darkins, a popular host with 1 million subscribers.
The reason why the Democrats have a low approval rating has nothing to do with what she just said or what Senator Mark Kelly just said. It's because of how they've radicalized their base over the past decade. Think about how they constantly appeal to their voters. They keep telling them that President Trump is an existential threat to our democracy, that he's Hitler, that he'll burn this country down and drive us to bankruptcy. And since none of that has actually happened, and even if they believe that it did happen, what's even worse, what can the Democrats physically do about it? Right, so the Democrats have put themselves in a position where they can't confirm what they've been saying. And that's why their approval rating will be low and will remain low for a long time until they change their messaging. But right now, their message continues to be fighting President Trump with all their might on every issue, instead of fighting for American citizens and looking for ways to work with President Trump in a bipartisan way to provide real solutions for the American people.
Well, here's a normal person, not a frozen puppet and not a polished liar with a stuck-on smile. You can't out-Trump Donald Trump.
And you can't surpass Donald Trump. It won't work. That's exactly why the Democratic Party has the lowest ratings across the country in history. More people dislike them, oppose them, and refuse to vote for them than ever before. And three groups that have left them. Young voters who used to be so supportive of the Democratic Party hate this negativity, and young men are looking toward the Republican Party. The second group is Latinos. There are twice as many Latino voters as African American voters, almost twice as many, and soon there will be twice as many. Again, the majority of Latino men voted for Trump. That has never happened before. And the third group is organized labor unions. Where are they looking? And the Democrats organizationally have been part of the labor unions for many years. These voters look at them and say, why are you talking about transgender people? Why are you raising social issues that aren't part of our lives? Why aren't you focusing on us? Three groups that are important to the Democratic coalition have left them. And they're not Republicans. They're not even for Trump, even though they voted for him, but they're giving another country a chance. And no negativity and no punches to the face will bring them back.
Explain this to the talking mouths of the Russian-speaking internet. By the way, do you know who throws the dirtiest mud at Trump? You guessed it, Ukrainians, the ones who need Trump-like air as their only savior. But they just can't help but say dirty things and nasty stuff. Because that's just how we are. We go out into the wind, unzip our fly, and pee against the wind because we just can't help ourselves. They do this to worsen the situation for Trump. By the way, what do the Democrats say about the alleged crimes related to the legend about Trump's ties with the Kremlin?
The assessment from the Intel Committee left out the most important element of the report, which strongly contradicted the main conclusions about Putin's intentions. The assessment lacked significant information that a longtime confidant of Putin told a sensitive contact. Quote, Putin told him that he doesn't care who wins the election. Putin claimed that in any case, Russia is strategically positioned to outplay either of them. So why was such information excluded from the Intelligence Committee's assessment?
Well, Shannon, let's be absolutely clear. There is no new information. That's exactly right. All the information that is in the House Intelligence Committee and was in the Senate is new to you, but all this information was available to the House Intelligence Committee, including 2017 to 2020 during the first Trump administration when all these investigations and reviews were conducted. And let's also be absolutely clear that we can't confuse what's actually happening here, and we can't confuse these accusations, right? Collusion is different from the claim that Russia had a clear preference, which was a bipartisan consensus, and it has been and remains so for many years.
The case when Putin said he had no preferences. How could they conclude that he took a miraculous side if that was intentionally excluded from the assessment where he said he had no preferences?
Nothing. Nothing was deliberately concealed. Nothing was deliberately hidden. All this information has been available for many years.
Nobody was hiding anything. Well, what is your hand doing in my bag and my hand in your bag? Your bag attacked my hand on its own. And here is the far-left journalist and Senator Lindsey Graham.
Former President Obama has weighed in through a spokesperson. Former President Obama has weighed in through his representative. He says that's simply not true. I actually spoke with Susan Miller, a former senior CIA officer who helped oversee the 2017 intelligence assessment on Russian interference. She denies that Obama or anyone else made the request
to change or influence their investigation. She says that all of them, she says, and she's a Republican, she says they all would have resigned if that had happened. Senator, are you attempting to revise history to divert attention from the Epstein case?
No, I'm trying to let you and the media know that we've found something we didn't know before. After all, I'm not calling for President Obama to be charged with treason, but I am calling for an investigation. Mr. Miller also said that there is no credible evidence that President Trump colluded with the Russians. For months, days, and weeks, people lived in an upside-down world following Mueller's narrative that Trump was colluding with the Russians, that Trump's campaign was cooperating with the Russians. The only people who were colluding with the Russians were Hillary Clinton's campaign and Christopher Steele, who created the document to obtain warrants against Carter Page based on lies and deception.
Let's stop here once again. I'll be gone for 10 days, but maybe I can record videos even while I'm on the trip. Well, of course, not every day. Thank you to everyone who listened, everyone who came back to listen to other videos, everyone who subscribed, and most importantly, everyone who shared, as they say, with their friends. The channel is growing. Since November 7th, there were 109,000. Today, there are 262,000. That's 582 people subscribing every day. Thank you for your trust. I promise that although I can, of course, make mistakes, I definitely won't deceive you. Yes, I sometimes swear I really don't like a few categories of people: fools, pseudo-intellectuals, and liars. Well, that is somewhere around 98% of the planet's population, but I absolutely love the remaining 2%. So thank you for being here. See you next time.
Subtitles created by